Joe's been on hold the longest. So Joe in Manassas, thanks for waiting. You're on with Matt and John.
Hey, Joe.
Hi, Matt. How you doing? I'm a fan of your show. I've listened to it for a little while, and I've heard some of your debates. I don't know. I kind of disagree a little bit with your view. I mean, I like your view on morality. I think it's sensible and pragmatic, but I can't see any reason for an objective morality in a naturalistic world.
Well, all right. So for clarity, before I go down the road, are you talking about objective morality or an absolute morality?
I guess, I mean, how would you define both of them?
Well, objective is contrasted with subjective. So if it's objective, it means that this is the case independent of anybody's personal opinion. Absolute means that this is the case in all circumstances.
Okay, so which one would you claim? Would you claim there's an absolute or an objective?
Subjective.
So outside of any of our thoughts,
outside of our opinions, so now there's a subjective foundation at the basis of it, which I've acknowledged before, which is well-being. Okay, but would you agree with me that we exist in a physical universe that has physical rules that dictate the consequences of our actions?
Yes.
And would you agree with me that those consequences of our actions determine our well-being?
Yes.
Okay. So now we've just established that there are non-subjective facts about reality that determine whether or not something is contributing to or detracting from our well-being.
Yes, I understand that.
Okay, that's objective. That's subjective morality.
Okay, my question is, I'm going to play kind of devil's advocate to your position, okay?
Oh, do God's advocate, because I'm so much more fun on the devil's side.
Okay, whatever. Now, what if I don't care about other people's well-being? Is that objectively wrong? Or what if I only care about my own human flourishing?
So yes, I could actually argue that that is objectively wrong, because unless you live alone on a planet interacting with absolutely nobody else, your well-being is intrinsically tied to the well-being of those around you.
Okay, and you would say human, like the Sam Harris position, human flourishing, what is the basis for human flourishing being good, but all other wouldn't a more reasonable position or be all sentient creatures' well-being?
So Sam has gone down the road of talking about sentient creatures. I have no problem with that, except that all we're talking about is the well-being of, let's say, thinking creatures. Or I'm fine with the idea that morality is fundamentally about those who actually participate, that we hold any thinking being morally responsible in proportion to its ability to understand. So, for example, you've got a 2-year-old, doesn't understand that much. You're not going to hold it to the same moral standard that you would hold, your twin brother, right?
Okay.
So there's this idea that you are morally responsible in proportion to your moral comprehension, your understanding of it. Okay. Similarly, we can expand that out to other thinking creatures beyond human beings to talk about what their moral responsibility is. If a shark tries to eat me, I don't think it's being immoral because I don't have any reason to think that it has an understanding of morality, right?
Okay, now what about you eating a cow?
So there's a difference between moral virtue and moral responsibility. So it may be morally virtuous for me to not eat any other animal, but I don't agree that it's a moral responsibility, because I also think that there needs to be an equitable arrangement between these. So like the shark isn't immoral for trying to eat me, and I don't think that I'm immoral for trying to eat a shark.
Well, I feel like I could turn that around and say, well, I don't think it's immoral from someone to steal from me, but I can still, if I don't mind stealing from them, because they can steal from me.
Yeah, except that's a little bit short-sighted, don't you think? Because your views and your impact on what morality are affect everybody else, right? And so it determines it determines what kind of society we're going to have. And so the thing that I encourage people to think of is, what would the world be like if everybody took the action that I'm about to take? And so you have to go into this with the idea that if it's okay for you to say this, it's okay for everybody to say this, and if everybody says this, society devolves and you are in fact worse off, as is everybody else.
Well, I'm just playing devil's advocate to your position. I think your position's sensible in the world we live in, but
I don't live in any other world, so that's all the only world I care about.
Okay, the world we all live in.
Yep.
You know, that's how I live my.
Okay, there's somebody else who wants to talk about morality, Joe. I'm going to see if they had something slightly different, and maybe let John chime in, as I'm not the ultimate arbiter of morality either.
Yeah, but you're the one who's done a lot of videos on the subject. So.
Yeah, but I might in fact be wrong. It's one of those things where the objections launched by religious people are, oh, well, without some ultimate authority, how can you solve this? Well, that's not solved by religion, because first of all, I have to accept your authority. And if your authority is your holy book or what you think your God says, what if I don't agree with that? So the problem is never solved. And so just recognizing that we need to first start with the thing that we agree on. Now, there are probably people who aren't going to care about human well-being. And I would say that they've divorced themselves from reasonable discussions about morality if we define morality as well-being. The only objections to this, by the way, which are launched all over the place, including by people who are friends of mine who disagreed with me, who disagreed with Sam Harris, is why should we care, but why should well-being be the foundation for what we call morality? And my position is really simple. I'm using it that way because I think that that's what most people are actually talking about when they talk about morality. If in fact that's not what people talk about when they talk about morality, I'm still right with respect to well-being. And if morality means something other than well-being, we got to have a whole separate conversation about what you mean by this.
Yeah.
You know.
If it's just whatever God says, then that's a completely different discussion.
Yep. Or you know, if there was somebody who emailed recently to say that they disagreed with this notion of well-being, and that their view of morality was about desires. The problem is that when you break that down, when you start going through desires, first of all, I have no access to somebody's desires. I can't judge their desires. I judge their actions. And the motivation for an action, you could have good actions that are motivated by bad desires and vice versa. So, I mean, this thing breaks down. And so when you get down to the root of what we're talking about in his desire model, and my apologies for not having him on to defend it himself, we're still talking about well-being. I recently debated on secular moral systems as opposed to Christianity, and which one was superior. And the view is really simple. Even if you think that morality is whatever God wants, the only way that you can encourage somebody else to care what God wants is by framing it in terms of their well-being. It is in your best interest to care about what God wants, because if you don't do this, you'll go to hell. If you do this, you'll go to heaven, or whatever, system this thing comes out to. At the end of the day, even the people who are saying morality is about what God wants from you, you still have to drill down to this idea of, why should I care what God wants? I don't care what your Uncle, Beavis wants from me, and he may be real. So you have to show how caring about what God wants is in my best interest. And when you get other people, now we're talking about well-being again, which is why, I will talk to Sam Harris about this at some point, because we're in agreement on this, whether we disagree on other things. I think that when he wrote The Moral Landscape and framed it in terms of well-being, as many people as objected for various reasons, I think that it's true that well-being is what we in fact care about when we're generally talking about morality and ethics and what kind of world do we live in. And I will continue to seek examples that show that that's not the case, or somebody who's got a better model. But at the end of the day, if I'm still talking about well-being, and if you agree with me about well-being and just say that that's not morality, okay, please explain to me what your view of morality is and why I should care. And by the way, now we're talking about my well-being again.